William James, a famous writer and researcher, he's a brother of another famous writer, Henry James. He studied religion, and he described his findings in studying all religions in the varieties of religious experience, a book I read years ago. And it describes the fact that many people who are seeking for enlightenment or insight to the spiritual metaphysical world often experience rebirth in their sojourns. So no matter what they are, this is what William James points out, it's not just Christians that experience regeneration or rebirth. And this fascinated me when I studied it. Buddhists and Muslims and all different walks experience or can experience something that they call spiritual rebirth or new life. And William James goes into the idea, he doesn't name these things specifically, but you can have a spiritual experience that gives you a new life or new world perspective through something like athletics or a new diet or joining the military. You can be a ne'er-do-well your whole life. You join the military when you're 19, and suddenly they give you structure, and people, when they become adults, say, the military changed my life. You know, I was literally born again when I entered into it. So what's the difference between being born again as a Christian and being born again when you embrace the 12 steps of a 12-step program? And we're going to have a guest in a couple of weeks who's going to describe being in the 12-step program and giving her new life. So what's the difference? Christians who say, I've been born again, and all these other people who experience rebirth. Simply put, the difference is, from the Christian perspective, is that in addition to being reborn, you have at least a belief, if not some type of metaphysical knowledge, that you've been forgiven of your sin. Therein lies the difference. We can't be so self-centered as Christians to think that other things in this world can't give people new perspective and new life. They certainly do. And when I read that William James book, it really opened my eyes to see that it's really self-centered to think that only Christians experience rebirth. It really isn't true. But what Buddhism and Taoism and regimentation gives through athletics or the military is that those things do not promise at least a belief, if not a knowledge, in the forgiveness of your sin, past, present, and future. And in that comes, with the Christian experience of rebirth, this hope, this belief, this trust that Jesus came and he did for us what we couldn't do. There's a story that I've told before. I don't think I've done it on Christianity Today. And it's about a guy who's walking through the jungle and he falls into a pit of quicksand and he's sinking down, and Muhammad comes up and he says, you know, by going through this, when you pass to the next life, you're going to inherit many wonderful things when you enter into heaven with Allah. And a Buddhist comes by and he says, you know, through suffering, you are going to progress in your person. Enjoy this because it's a good thing. And every religious sage comes by in the story and stops as the man sinks and gives them their advice and insight on what they're going to glean and gather from the experience of sinking slowly to their death. But the story, you know, of course, is made up. Jesus comes along and he jumps in and he pushes himself below the surface of the sand, going well below the man who's sinking, and giving his life pushes the man up to safety. And in giving his life, the parallel is he gives his life for the forgiveness of sin. And in doing that, he also gives new life. That's the way maybe you ought to compare it when you talk to people who have had regenerative experiences in their life through different things, even drugs. There are people who take drugs and they have had mighty spiritual experiences that changed their life. I have a good friend named Max who ate some mushrooms, and he really had a change of life. It changed his entire life. So even drugs can bring about a rebirth. The question is, do those other things promise you forgiveness of sin? Out!